So in this lesson, we're going to be looking at the Ghost of Christmas Past, and we're going to be exploring how Dickens presents this character. So in this section of the text, we're likely to come across some words again that are more familiar with a 19th century reader than perhaps a 21st century reader. These words include half recumbent, half lying down, receded, which means moving backwards, lustrous, which means shiny, emblem, a symbolic object, fluctuated, rising and falling irregularly, dwarfish, which means short, reverently, with deep and solemn respect, conducive, make a certain situation more likely, clad means clothed, reclamation, the process of claiming something back, vestige, a trace of something that is disappearing, further, intense and passionate feeling, jocund, cheerful and light-hearted, and savour, to taste or enjoy to the full. Just a quick reminder of what's happened so far. Scrooge has been visited by his old friend Marley in the form of a ghost. Marley has warned Scrooge that he's going to be visited by two ghosts. The first ghost will arrive on the hour of 1, and Scrooge is just waiting for this hour to chime. The hour itself, said Scrooge triumphantly, and nothing else. He spoke before the hour bell sounded, which it now did with a deep, dull, hollow melancholy. Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn. The curtains of his bed were drawn aside, I tell you, by a hand. Not the curtains at his feet, nor the curtains at his back, but those to which his face was addressed. The curtain of his bed were drawn aside, and Scrooge, starting up into a half-recumbent attitude, found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them, as close to it as I am now to you, and I am standing in the spirit at your elbow. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium, which gave him the appearance of having receded from the view and being diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it, and the tenderest bloom was on the skin. The arms were very long and muscular, the hands the same, as if its hold were of uncommon strength. Its legs and feet, most delicately formed, were, like those upper members, bare. It wore a tunic of the purest white, and round its waist was bound a lustrous belt, the sheen of which was beautiful. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and, in singular contradiction of that wintry emblem, had its dress trimmed with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprung a bright clear jet of light, by which all of this was visible, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using, in its duller moments, a great extinguisher for a cap, which it now held under its arm. In this section, the spirit intends to take Scrooge back to his past and childhood, and therefore try to understand why he behaves in such a miserly, heartless way. The spirit is described as being both like a child and like an old man. The spirit represents the innocence of child and yet possesses the wisdom associated with age, two things we typically do not think of as going together. Usually, as we gain wisdom, we lose our innocence. This could literally represent the spirit taking Scrooge back to his childhood when he was innocent, or the spirit could represent the wisdom and experience Scrooge will gain from the spirit, the wisdom of the world that he failed to gain during his life. It could also represent the wisdom and knowledge that the spirit has to give Scrooge due to his experience of many Christmases past. Dickens uses juxtaposition, which means opposite ideas, in this description, with the spirit having white hair, which suggests old age, along with a description of its face having a tenderest bloom. These descriptions demonstrate the combination of youthful innocence along with knowledgeable old age. The hair, being long, may also demonstrate how old the spirit is and how many Christmas past he has experienced, which has therefore made him wise and knowledgeable. Juxtaposition is used again to describe the spirit as having muscular arms, which suggest strength, along with delicate legs and feet, which represent fragile youth. Dickens repeats the use of the colour white, his white hair, his white tunic, which again suggests the innocence of youth, foreshadowing the childhood that the spirit will be taking Scrooge back to. Dickens describes the ghost as holding holly. Holly is a plant which traditionally represents Christmas, but it's also an evergreen plant which stays green all year round. This could symbolise that, although it is Christmas, what Scrooge will learn will stay with him throughout the rest of the year. Holly also has a symbolic Christian meaning. Its pointed leaves and red berries are a representation of Christ's crown of thorns, which could therefore be used to represent redemption. The holly, the plant that represents winter, is also juxtaposed against the summer flowers. The summer flower could represent the fact that the past is present in all seasons. The light that shines from the ghost's head symbolises the illumination which can come from reflecting on one's past, and the cap which the ghost wears symbolises the ability for each person to either extinguish or learn from the light of their memory, if he or she chooses to do so. The spirit is literally shining a light on Scrooge's past for him to learn from. Metaphorically, the ghost could also represent the same guiding light as Jesus did when he was sent to teach humanity a lesson. Even this, though, when Scrooge looked at it with increasing steadiness, was not its strangest quality. For, as its belt sparkled and glittered now in one part and now in another, and what was light one instant at another time was dark, so the figure itself fluctuated in its distinctiveness, being now a thing with one arm and now with one leg, now with 20 legs, now a pair of legs without a head, now a head without a body, of which dissolving parts no outline would be visible, in the dense gloom wherein they melted away. And in the very wonder of this, it would be itself again, distinct and clear as ever. "Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?" asked Scrooge. "I am." The voice was soft and gentle, singularly low, as if instead of being so close beside him, it were at a distance. "Who and what are you?" Scrooge demanded. "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" inquired Scrooge, observant of its dwarfish stature. "No, your past." Perhaps Scrooge could not have told anyone why, if anyone could have asked him, but he had a special desire to see the spirit in his cap, and begged him to be covered. "What!" exclaimed the ghost, "would you so soon put out with worldly hands the light I give? Is it not enough that you are one of those whose passions made this cap, and forced me through whole trains of years to wear it low upon my brow?" So in this section, the ghost is shifting in appearance. It seems to be there and not be there at the same time. The ghost is presented as surreal and strange. It flickers like a candle and seems to reflect the dilemma of whether Scrooge's past behaviour can be redeemed or not. The fact that Scrooge has a special desire for the spirit's light to be covered could suggest how Scrooge is unwilling to revisit his past, maybe because of painful memories that he has, or because he is still unwilling to learn from these memories and change. The ghost berates Scrooge for not taking the opportunity he is giving him. Scrooge reverently disclaimed all intention to offend or any knowledge of having wilfully bonneted the spirit at any period of his life. He then made bold to inquire what business brought him there. "Your welfare," said the ghost. Scrooge expressed himself much obliged, but he couldn't help thinking what a night of unbroken rest would have been more conducive to that end. The spirit must have heard him thinking, for it said immediately, "Your reclamation, then, take heed." It put out its strong hand as it spoke, and clasped him gently by the arm. "Rise, and walk with me." It would have been in vain for Scrooge to plead that the weather and the hour were not adapted to pedestrian purposes, that bed was warm and the thermometer a long way below freezing, that he was clad but lightly in his slippers, dressing gown and nightcap, and that he had a cold upon him at that time. The grasp, though gentle as a woman's hand, was not to be resisted. He rose, but finding that the spirit made towards the window, clasped his robe in supplication. "I am a mortal," Scrooge remonstrated, "and liable to fall." "Bear but a touch of my hand there," said the spirit, laying it upon his heart, "and you shall be upheld in more than this." As the words were spoken, they passed through the wall and stood upon an open country road, with fields on either hand. The city had entirely vanished. Not a vestige of it was to be seen. The darkness and the mist had vanished with it, for it was a clear, cold winter day with snow upon the ground. The ghost does not speak much, but answers Scrooge's questions with brief replies. When Scrooge asks the ghost what business it has that evening, the response is short and to the point. Your welfare, said the ghost. This ghost does not waste words. The imperative verbs in command form, rise and walk, shows that the ghost is to be obeyed. It has control over the situation here. The fact that the ghost's grasp was not to be resisted shows how the past has a hold over you and can shape who you are. You can never escape it. The spirit laying Scrooge's hand over his heart in order to stop him from falling could represent how important love is and how love prevents people from metaphorically falling and being miserable in life. Good heavens, said Scrooge, clasping his hands together as he looked about him. I was bred in this place. I was a boy here. The spirit gazed upon him mildly. Its gentle touch, though it had been light and instantaneous, appeared still present to the old man's sense of feeling. He was conscious of 1,000 odours floating in the air, each one connected with 1,000 thoughts and hopes and joys and cares long, long forgotten. Your trip is trembling, said the ghost, and what is that upon your cheek? Scrooge muttered with an unusual catching in his voice that it was a pimple, and begged the ghost to lead him where he would. You recollect the way? Inquired the spirit. Remember it? Cried Scrooge with fervour. I could walk it blindfold. Strange to have forgotten it for so many years, observed the ghost. Let us go on. They walked along the road. Scrooge recognised every gate and post and tree until a little market town appeared in the distance, with its bridge, its church and winding river. Some shaggy ponies now were seen trotting towards them, with boys upon their back, who called to other boys in country gigs and carts driven by farmers. All these boys were in great spirits and shouted to each other until the broad fields were so full of merry music that the crisp air laughed to hear it. These are but shadows of the things that have been, said the ghost. They have no consciousness of us. Scrooge, clasping his hands together, is an almost childlike, joyful gesture, which shows how the past is already transforming him. The spirit, pointing out something on Scrooge's cheek, suggests that Scrooge is crying and therefore emotional at the scene before him. This is the first sign of any real compassion or emotion in Scrooge. The scene is described as joyful and idyllic, using descriptions such as great spirit and merry music. The fact that Scrooge has forgotten it for so many years suggests that Scrooge has forgotten the pleasure and happiness that he experienced once as a boy. The jocund travellers came on, and as they came, Scrooge knew and named them every one. Why was he rejoiced beyond all bounds to see them? Why did his cold eye glisten and his heart leap up as they went past? Why was he filled with gladness when he heard them give each one Merry Christmas as they parted at crossroads and byways for their several homes? What was Merry Christmas to Scrooge? Out upon Merry Christmas, what good had it ever done him? The school is not quite deserted, said the ghost. A solitary child, neglected by friends, is left there still. Scrooge said he knew it, and he sobbed. They left the high road by a well-remembered lane, and soon approached a mansion of dull red brick, with a little weathercock-surmounted cupola on the roof and a bell hanging in it. It was a large house, but one of broken fortunes, for the spacious offices were little used. Their walls were damp and mossy, their windows broken and their gates decayed. Fowls clucked and strutted in the stables, and the coach-house and sheds were overrun with grass. Nor was it more retentive of its ancient state within, for entering the dreary hall and glancing through the open doors of many rooms, they found them poorly furnished, cold and vast. There was an earthy savour in the air, a chilly bareness in the place, which associated itself somehow with too much getting up by candlelight and not too much to eat. We see further evidence of Scrooge's emotions in this section. He is filled with gladness when he hears the words Merry Christmas, which suggests he wasn't always against Christmas being a time of celebration, as he once enjoyed it as a child. The hustle and bustle of so many happy travellers is quickly juxtaposed by the mention of a solitary child who is neglected by friends. This demonstrates how, as a child, Scrooge was an outsider to the celebrations happening around him at Christmas. This creates sympathy in the reader, and Scrooge is clearly still emotional about what he experienced as a child as he sobs. This may start to explain why Christmas is not a time of great happiness for Scrooge. Where Scrooge is residing is also described in contrast to the happy scene described in the last section. The phrases and words broken fortune, damp, decay, and dreary, cold suggest poverty and wretchedness, again highlighting that Scrooge's childhood was difficult and therefore a memory that he would prefer to forget.